A lonely millionaire took his assistant to a ball his friends mocked him until she walked in. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support truly means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us get back to our main character. It was a gray morning at JFK Airport, the kind of day when every departure board flickered with delays and sighs. Mia Tran tightened her ponytail and pulled the oversized Skylink blazer closer around her shoulders. She was not even supposed to be here. Her cousin, a VIP pickup coordinator, had called her at dawn, panic in her voice. "Mia, I got stuck in traffic. Please, just hold a name sign for my client until I get there. His name's Adrian Cole." So Mia had rushed in, half awake, still smelling of instant coffee and cheap perfume. She stood among the crowd of greeters, holding a white placard that read, "Mr. Adrian Cole," in neat handwriting. Around her, chauffeurs waited with crisp suits and polished shoes. Mia's sneakers were soaked from the rain outside, her second-hand coat frayed at the cuffs. Still, she smiled, because that was the only armor she had. The sliding doors hissed open. Passengers streamed out, rolling luggage echoing across the marble floor. That was when she saw him tall, dark-haired, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit. His expression was unreadable, the kind that came from years of being in charge. He walked straight toward her. "Mr. Cole?" she asked, holding up the sign. He stopped, eyes narrowing slightly, scanning her as if confirming an appointment. "You are from the agency?" Her mouth opened, then closed. Yes. Yes, I am." "Oh." He nodded once curtly. "Good. You are late. The car is outside." Before Mia could explain, he turned and walked toward the exit. She blinked, then hurried after him through the drizzle, dragging her cousin's suitcase behind her. The black sedan waiting at the curb gleamed like wet obsidian. The driver opened the door without a word. Mia hesitated for half a heartbeat, then climbed in. The scent inside was all leather and cold rain. The man beside her pulled out his phone, scrolling through emails. "I am sorry about the delay," she murmured. "The traffic." He cut her off. "Save it. My PR team said you would be discreet. I expect professionalism, not excuses." Her heart skipped. PR team? Discreet? What was he talking about? She turned slightly. "I think there's been—" But he looked up, his gaze steady, sharp. "We both know why you are here. You read the contract, did you not? You pretend to be my fiancé until the merger closes. That is all I need from you." Mia froze. Her pulse thudded in her ears. Contract? Fiancé? For a moment she thought he was joking, but Adrian Cole did not look like a man who joked. Rain streaked down the window as the city blurred past. Mia gripped the edge of her seat, realizing one small favor for her cousin had just become something far bigger and far more dangerous. Outside, thunder rolled over the skyline. Inside the car, silence pressed close between them, a silence that would soon change both of their lives forever. The rain had slowed by the time the car pulled into the private driveway of the Skylink Tower. Glass walls rose into the clouds, their reflections slicing through the mist. Mia sat frozen, her fingers locked around her cousin's suitcase. Every sound seemed too loud, the wipers, the hum of the engine, the soft tap of Adrian Cole's phone. When the car stopped, he finally spoke. "You will meet my attorney in 30 minutes. He will review the agreement before tonight's event." Mia blinked. "Agreement?" Adrian turned to her, his expression unreadable. "The contract, Miss Tran. I assume the agency gave you a copy." She opened her mouth, then closed it again. No one had given her anything. "I think there has been—" He interrupted sharply. "I do not have time for confusion. You were hired for a reason. Play your role, and you will be compensated as promised." The door opened before she could reply. A uniformed attendant escorted her through the lobby, marble gleaming under her wet sneakers. Everything smelled of jasmine and money. She had never been in a place like this. Every detail screamed luxury, the art on the walls, the silent elevators, the way people nodded respectfully when Adrian walked by. In the suite upstairs, the city stretched beneath the windows like a living map. Mia stood near the door, clutching her bag as Adrian set his briefcase down. He removed his coat, rolled his sleeves, and looked at her as though measuring a problem he needed to solve. "You look ordinary," he said finally. "We have a gala in 4 hours. You will need to look convincing." "Convincing for what?" she asked softly. "For being my fiancé." The words struck her like a slap. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. "I'm sorry, what?" He crossed to the bar, poured a glass of water, and handed it to her. "My company is finalizing a merger with a European partner. They expect stability in my personal life. My PR chief arranged this engagement to avoid gossip. The agency sent your profile yesterday." Mia stared at the glass in her hands. Water trembled inside it. "Mr. Cole, I am not from any agency. I was just covering for my cousin. I think you have the wrong person." Adrian's eyes narrowed. "Your cousin's name?" "Mia Tran. She works at Skylink Hospitality." He froze for a brief second, realization dawning, then exhaled sharply. "Unbelievable." Mia stepped back. "I will go. I am sorry for the confusion. You cannot leave." His voice was firm, controlled, but there was tension behind it. "The press already saw us together at the airport. If you walk out now, the story will explode by evening. My stock will take a hit, and my board will demand answers." "How?" Mia stared at him, stunned. "So what are you saying?" "I am saying," he replied, "you will have to play along. Just for tonight." She shook her head. "This is insane. I am not an actress. I am not." He took a step closer, lowering his voice. "Then think of it as a temporary job. You stay by my side, attend the gala, smile for the cameras. Tomorrow, we will issue a quiet clarification. You will be paid well." Her heart pounded. Her mother's medical bills flashed in her mind, the rent notice taped to her door, the scholarship she had lost 2 weeks ago. She needed money, but this was madness. Adrian placed a folder on the table, a single page inside. "Here, one-night contract, $5,000. Sign it, and this will all be over by morning." Mia stared at the page, her breath catching. "5,000? For pretending to be your fiancé?" He nodded once. "That is the market rate for discretion." "Oh?" The pen felt heavy in her fingers. Her instincts screamed to walk away. Yet the memory of her mother's weak smile in the hospital bed held her still. Finally, she signed. Adrian's gaze softened for the first time, almost imperceptibly. "Good. You will have a stylist in 1 hour. The driver will take you to the fitting room. Do not be late." When he left the suite, the silence rushed in like a tide. Mia sat on the edge of the velvet couch, staring at the contract. Outside, the rain began again, soft, steady, unending. Somewhere inside her, a voice whispered that this mistake had just changed the course of her life forever. The next hour felt like a blur. The stylist arrived with racks of designer dresses and a calm efficiency that made Mia feel even more out of place. She stood on the small platform in front of the mirror, while the woman pinned and adjusted layers of silk around her. Every reflection looked less like herself, and more like someone who belonged in Adrian Cole's world. "You have beautiful shoulders," the stylist murmured. "Do not slouch. Confidence is part of the outfit." Mia nodded quietly, watching her own uncertain eyes in the mirror. The gown shimmered silver under the light, elegant and distant. She thought about the $5,000 she had agreed to earn and how heavy that money already felt in her chest. When she finally stepped out of the fitting room, Adrian was waiting in the living area. His black tuxedo was perfectly tailored, his tie precise, his expression unreadable. For a moment, he seemed to forget the files in his hand. His gaze flicked from her shoes to her face, then settled with a faint trace of surprise. "You clean up well," he said. "I am not sure if that is a compliment or an observation," she replied, her voice soft but steady. He allowed the corner of his mouth to move, almost a smile. "Both." They left the suite and descended to the lobby, where the sound of heels and quiet conversation echoed against marble. The driver held the car door, and Mia slipped into the back seat beside Adrian. The city outside gleamed with evening lights, reflections stretching across wet streets like ribbons of gold. As they drove toward the gala, Adrian spoke without looking at her. "Here is what you need to know. We arrive together, we greet the press, and we stay close. No improvisation, no personal details. You smile when I speak, nod when appropriate, and say as little as possible." Mia folded her hands in her lap. "I can manage that." "Good. And one more thing," he added, turning slightly toward her. Do not let anyone see that you are nervous. In this world, hesitation smells like weakness. The car slowed before the entrance of the Grand Meridian Hotel. Camera flashes burst through the tinted windows. Mia felt her pulse jump. Adrian glanced at her once more, then extended his hand. Ready? She inhaled deeply. As ready as I can be. When she took his hand, his palm was warm, steady, grounding. The door opened, and a wall of light hit her. Voices called his name from every direction. Mr. Cole, over here. Is this your fiancé? Adrian kept his composure, one hand resting lightly on the small of her back as they walked up the steps. Smile, he murmured, low enough for only her to hear. She did. The cameras flashed again, capturing the image of a billionaire and the woman who seemed made for him. Inside, chandeliers spilled light over crystal tables and polished silver. Music hummed from a live orchestra, elegant and distant. Adrian greeted investors, partners, and journalists with ease. Mia followed his rhythm, nodding and smiling exactly as instructed. But every so often, she caught people whispering, eyes narrowing, scanning her face as if trying to place her. During a lull in conversation, a tall woman approached them, red dress sharp as a blade. Adrian, she said smoothly, you did not tell me you were bringing someone tonight. Julia, Adrian replied evenly. This is Mia Tran, my fiancé. The woman's brows lifted. Fiancé? That is, sudden. It was a private decision, he said. We prefer to keep it quiet. Oh? Julia smiled without warmth. Of course you do. Her gaze swept over Mia. You must be very special. Mia met her eyes, forcing herself to hold steady. I am just grateful to be here. Adrian guided her away before Julia could say more. When they reached the edge of the ballroom, he leaned closer. You handled that well. She did not like me very much. She does not like anyone, he said simply. For the first time, Mia allowed herself a small laugh. The tension in her shoulders eased slightly. They moved through the crowd together, playing their roles to perfection. Yet somewhere between the practiced smiles and the polite handshakes, she began to notice something unexpected in Adrian's eyes, a flicker of weariness, maybe even loneliness hidden behind the precision of his every word. When the speeches ended, the orchestra shifted to a softer melody. Adrian excused himself for a moment to speak with the board chairman. Mia drifted toward the balcony, needing air. The night outside was cool and alive with city noise. She leaned on the railing, watching headlights move like fireflies below. A few minutes later, she felt his presence beside her. Too loud in there? Too perfect, she said. He looked at her for a long moment, then said quietly, You did well tonight. Better than I expected. High praise from someone who does not believe in mistakes. His jaw tightened slightly, then relaxed. Maybe I am learning that not every mistake is a bad one. They stood in silence as a breeze lifted her hair. For the first time that night, Mia forgot about the contract folded in her purse. The money, the lies. In that fragile stillness, they were just two people on a balcony above the city, both pretending, both unsure what might come next. The next morning, the city woke under pale sunlight. The rain had stopped, leaving the air clean and sharp. Mia stood at the window of her small rented apartment, still half convinced that the previous night had been a dream. The silver gown hung over a chair, the faint scent of perfume and champagne still clinging to it. On the table lay the envelope with 5 crisp checks inside. She touched it once, then pulled her hand back as if it burned. Her phone buzzed. A message flashed on the screen. From Adrian Cole. Be ready by noon. We have another event. The contract is extended. Details later. She read it twice, her pulse quickening. Extended? She thought last night was supposed to be the end of it. At noon, a car arrived. The same driver, the same silent professionalism. When she reached the Skylink Tower again, Adrian was waiting in the conference lounge, speaking quietly with his assistant. He turned when she entered, his suit immaculate, his tone brisk. You handled yourself well yesterday, he said. The board was pleased. However, the press coverage was enthusiastic. To keep the story consistent, we will need to maintain the engagement until the merger is finalized. Mia hesitated. How long will that take? 30 days. Her heart sank. A month? He nodded once. You will be compensated appropriately. She folded her arms. Mr. Cole, this is not a game. I have my own life. For a second, the CEO mask slipped. His eyes softened. I know, but right now, my company is under a microscope. If I appear unstable, everything we have built could collapse. You would be helping me and yourself. Helping myself? He handed her another folder. Inside was a check, and beneath it, a document from the Skylink Art Foundation, a scholarship grant. You mentioned that you studied design, he said. Consider this my guarantee that your education will continue. All you have to do is stand beside me when the cameras are on. Mia stared at the papers, then looked back at him. So this is a transaction again. I prefer to call it a partnership, he said quietly. She signed the extension before she could overthink it. That evening, she accompanied him to a corporate dinner with investors. The restaurant glowed with candlelight and murmured conversation. Adrian spoke confidently, discussing expansion strategies and global markets. Mia sat beside him, nodding politely when addressed, her posture straight, her smile calm. But as she watched him work, she saw what others did, not the tension in his hands when no one looked, the fatigue behind the perfect charm. Between courses, he leaned toward her and murmured, "You are doing fine. You make this easier than I expected." She met his gaze. Easier for who? He almost smiled. For both of us. Later, in the car, the city lights painted soft gold across his face. Why are you doing this, really? She asked. What do you mean? You are rich enough to ignore what people think. Why pretend to be engaged to someone you barely know? He looked out the window for a long time before answering. Because appearances are everything in this business. Investors trust stability. And maybe because it is easier to stage perfection than to risk something real. The words lingered between them. When the car stopped in front of her apartment, he turned to her. You are not obligated to stay beyond the contract. But if you choose to, I will make sure you are safe. She opened the door slowly. Safe is not the same as happy. His voice followed her softly. No, it is not. Days passed in a rhythm neither of them expected. Breakfast meetings, charity luncheons, photo sessions, each event blurred into the next, and with every appearance, their act became more convincing. Yet away from the cameras, something shifted quietly. Adrian began to ask about her art, her sketches, the reason she loved airports. She told him about the sense of motion, the idea that every departure was also a beginning. One night, after a late charity gala, she returned to the suite they now shared for appearances. The city glimmered through the glass walls. She kicked off her shoes and found Adrian on the balcony, jacket off, sleeves rolled to his elbows, a rare moment of stillness in a life that never stopped moving. You could have been anything, she said softly. Why choose this world? He did not answer right away. Maybe I thought power would make me free, but it just built a different kind of cage. Mia stepped beside him, the wind lifting a strand of her hair. Maybe cages feel safer than falling. He turned to her, studying her face. You are not afraid of me, are you? She met his eyes. Should I be? For a moment, something unspoken passed between them, something fragile, almost tender. Then his phone buzzed, breaking the spell. He glanced at the screen, the mask sliding back into place. Early meeting tomorrow, he said. You should rest. When he disappeared into his room, Mia stood alone by the window, the contract still folded in her purse, her reflection mingling with the city lights. She realized that somewhere along the line, she had stopped pretending, and she wondered if he ever allowed himself to feel. Would he stop pretending too? The following week unfolded like a slow storm. The merger that had driven Adrian's every move was now at its final stage. Reporters hovered outside Skylink Tower, cameras flashing at every sighting of them together. Each time Mia stepped from a car beside him, she felt the weight of the world's gaze pressing down on her smile. Yet, in private, things had begun to change in ways she could not fully explain. Adrian had grown quieter, less mechanical. Sometimes, in the middle of long meetings, he would glance at her as if searching for something unspoken. At night, when the city fell silent, they would share brief conversations over coffee in the suite's kitchen, small, human moments that felt more honest than anything staged before cameras. On the 10th day, they attended a board dinner in a private hall overlooking the river. Everything gleamed. Crystal glasses, polished silver, white orchids in tall vases. Mia wore a navy dress, modest but elegant, chosen herself this time. Adrian, in his black tuxedo, looked every inch the composed executive, but the muscles in his jaw never relaxed. Halfway through the meal, one of the senior investors raised a glass. To the future of Skylink, he said, smiling. "And to our favorite power couple." Laughter rippled around the table. Adrian lifted his glass with polite detachment. Mia followed suit, but beneath the table, she felt his hand brush hers briefly, grounding her as if to say, "Just a little longer." After dinner, while Adrian spoke with the chairman, Mia stepped out to the terrace. The wind from the river cooled her flushed cheeks. She leaned on the stone railing, watching city lights scatter across the water like molten gold. "You look like you are trying to escape," a voice said behind her. It was Julia, the woman from the gala, the one with the sharp red dress and sharper tone. Tonight, her smile was thin and deliberate. "I am just getting some air," Mia replied evenly. Julia tilted her head. "It is interesting, you know. I have known Adrian Cole for 7 years. In all that time, he has never mentioned being in a relationship. Then suddenly, he appears with you." Mia stayed quiet. Julia's eyes gleamed. "You are not what you seem, are you? Tell me, how much is he paying you to play this part?" Mia's heart lurched. "Excuse me?" Julia stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Do not look so shocked. People talk. The timing, the photos, the press. It all feels a little too neat." Before Mia could answer, Adrian appeared in the doorway. His voice was calm, but the edge beneath it was unmistakable. "Julia, that is enough." Julia turned, pretending surprise. "Just a friendly chat." Then consider it over," he said. Her eyes flicked between them, measuring the air. "Careful, Adrian. Some stories are harder to control than others." With that, she walked away, her heels clicking against marble. Mia exhaled slowly. "She knows." "She suspects," Adrian corrected. "There is a difference." She looked up at him. "What happens when she tells everyone?" He studied her face for a long moment. "Then I will deal with it. But not tonight." Amberless. When they returned to the suite later, silence stretched between them. Adrian poured a drink, his movements precise, controlled. "Julia was always ambitious," he said finally. "She will not rest until she finds proof." Mia sank into a chair. "So, what do we do?" "We stay ahead of her," he said simply. "We make the lie so convincing that no one dares question it." She hesitated. "That is not who I am, Adrian." He turned toward her, eyes dark under the soft light. "It is not who I am either, but for now, it is who we have to be." The air thickened between them. He set down the glass, the faint clink echoing in the quiet room. "Mia, I did not mean for any of this to drag you in so deeply." She looked at him, voice trembling but steady. "Then why do I feel like you do not want me to leave?" He did not answer. Instead, he moved closer, the space between them shrinking until she could see the tired lines around his eyes. "Because somewhere along the line," he said softly, "you stopped being a problem to solve." Her breath caught. The world outside seemed to fade, leaving only the rhythm of their breathing, the city humming beyond the glass. But before anything else could be said, his phone vibrated sharply against the counter. He checked the screen, his face hardening. "What is it?" she asked. "The merger partner," he replied. "They have called an emergency meeting tomorrow. Someone leaked the engagement as a publicity stunt." Her stomach dropped. "Julia." "Most likely," he said. "If the board believes this was fake, the deal collapses." Mia rose to her feet. "Then let me help you fix it." His eyes met hers, full of something between admiration and regret. "You already have," he said quietly. "You just do not know it yet." That night, neither of them slept. Adrian worked at his desk, sending emails and taking calls, while Mia sat on the balcony, watching the lights of the city flicker like anxious stars. She did not know what the morning would bring, but for the first time, the thought of walking away no longer felt simple. The lie had become her life, and somewhere in that lie the truth had begun to bloom. By the next morning, tension had wrapped itself around Skylink Tower like a silent fog. The merger meeting was set for 10 o'clock sharp, and every executive in the building seemed to move with the stiffness of people afraid to breathe wrong. Mia sat in the back seat of the black sedan, watching the skyline slide past. She had barely slept, her thoughts looping through Adrian's words from the night before. "You already have helped me, you just do not know it yet." When they arrived, photographers waited near the glass entrance. Adrian stepped out first, tall and unflinching beneath the morning Sunday. He extended his hand to help her out, the gesture firm but gentle. Cameras flashed in rapid bursts. Mia smiled faintly, every muscle in her face controlled, her heartbeat loud in her ears. Inside the elevator, Adrian's reflection in the mirrored wall looked calm, but she could see the tension around his mouth. "Whatever happens in there," he said quietly, "do not speak unless I ask you to. I need you to trust me." She nodded. "I do." The boardroom was vast, lined with dark wood and city views stretching across the glass. The air smelled of coffee and anticipation. At the long table sat 12 men and women in tailored suits, their faces serious. The chairman cleared his throat. "Mr. Cole, before we discuss the merger, we must address this." He slid a newspaper across the table. The front page headline read, "Fake Fiancé Scandal. Skylink's CEO Faces Questions." Mia's stomach turned. Her photograph was there, her hand on Adrian's arm at the gala, her smile frozen under the flash. Adrian did not flinch. "I am aware of the article," he said evenly. "It is false." The chairman's brow arched. "Is it? The story quotes a source inside your company." Adrian's voice remained steady. "There is always someone eager to sell gossip. But if you are asking whether my relationship with Miss Tran is real, the answer is yes." The room fell silent. Mia's breath caught. Adrian continued, his tone deliberate, measured. "We have chosen to keep our engagement private because my fiancée values her independence. The press will spin anything into scandal, but I assure you our commitment is genuine." Someone from the legal department asked, "Would you be willing to verify that claim publicly?" Adrian looked directly at Mia. "Yes," he said. "We both would." Every eye turned to her. For a moment, the world seemed to narrow to a single heartbeat. She forced herself to breathe, to meet their gazes. "What Mr. Cole said is true," she said quietly but clearly. "I did not expect this attention, but I stand by him." Her voice trembled slightly at the end, but it was enough. The chairman nodded once, tension easing from the room. "Then let us return to business." When the meeting adjourned 2 hours later, the merger was approved unanimously. As soon as the doors closed, Adrian exhaled deeply and rubbed the bridge of his nose. "You handled that better than some of my vice presidents," he said. Mia tried to smile. "I did not even know what I was agreeing to." "You agreed to the truth," he said. They rode the elevator in silence. When the doors opened to the private lobby, sunlight spilled across the floor. For the first time in weeks, Adrian looked lighter. He loosened his tie, turning toward her. "I owe you more than I can ever repay." "I think you already have," she said. "You helped me believe I could survive in a world that used to scare me." He stepped closer, his voice low. "You never needed my help, Mia. You just needed someone to see you." Before she could respond, his phone buzzed again. Julia's name lit the screen. His expression hardened. "Excuse me," he said, stepping aside to answer. She turned away, walking toward the tall window that overlooked the city. Through the reflection, she saw his posture stiffen, his voice drop. When he ended the call, he looked pale. "What happened?" she asked. "Julia went to the press again," he said. "She is claiming you were hired by the company's PR team. If that spreads, it will undo everything we fixed today." Mia felt the floor tilt beneath her. "Then tell them the truth." Adrian shook his head. "The truth will only make it worse. They will think I manipulated the board. I can handle a scandal, but I will not let them destroy you in the process." She took a step closer. "You cannot protect me by lying more." His jaw clenched. "Then what do you suggest?" Her voice was steady now. "Tell them who I really am. Tell them I was never for sale." He stared at her for a long moment, and for the first time, she saw fear flicker behind his composure, not fear of losing the merger, but fear of losing her. That evening, they appeared together at a press conference arranged in haste. Reporters filled the hall, flashes bursting like lightning. Adrian took the podium, his expression calm, his voice firm. "There has been speculation about my engagement," he began. "Let me make one thing clear. This woman beside me is not a prop or an arrangement. She is the reason I remembered what integrity means." The cameras kept flashing. Mia stood beside him, her hand trembling slightly until he reached for it, grounding her once more. "She walked into my life by accident," he continued, "and reminded me that the best things never come from contracts, they come from choices." The hall went silent for a moment before the questions started again, but it did not matter. The truth had been spoken. Later, when they left the building, the city lights reflected on the wet pavement like scattered stars. Adrian turned to her, voice soft but certain. "Whatever happens now, I would rather face it with you than spend another day pretending." For the first time, Mia smiled without fear. "Then stop pretending," she said. He took her hand. Done. And in that simple word, something between them shifted from performance to promise. The news spread faster than either of them could have imagined. By morning, every major outlet ran the same headline: CEO Adrian Cole and designer Mia Tran, a real love story born from a mistake. Some called it romantic, others called it reckless. But for the first time in months, Adrian did not care what anyone thought. He spent the day in back-to-back calls, handling investors and calming departments, while Mia stayed mostly out of sight in the Art Foundation's office downstairs. When he finally appeared at her door near sunset, he looked exhausted but lighter somehow. "It worked," he said simply. "The merger held. The board backed down." And Mia set down the sketchbook she had been using to distract herself. "So, it is over?" He nodded slowly. "Yes. The contracts are done. The lies are finished. You are free, Mia." For a moment, the words felt heavier than they should have. She forced a small smile. "Free sounds nice." Adrian leaned against the doorway, studying her face. "You do not seem happy about it." "I am," she said softly. "I just thought I would feel different." Silence lingered between them. He stepped closer, voice low. "Maybe freedom is not about walking away. Maybe it is about choosing where to stay." She looked up at him, unsure how to answer. His phone buzzed again, but this time, he ignored it. "Mia," he said, "when this started, I told myself it was temporary. I told myself I did not believe in anything real anymore. But you changed that." Her heart beat hard against her ribs. "Adrian," he took her hand gently. "I do not want to go back to the man I was before you walked into that airport. I do not want to live behind contracts and walls. I want something honest." Her throat tightened. "Honest is dangerous," she whispered. He smiled faintly. "So is love." Before she could speak, there was a knock at the door. It was Adrian's assistant, holding a folder. "Sir, the press is requesting a follow-up statement about the engagement." Adrian looked at Mia, then back at his assistant. "Tell them the engagement is real," he said. The assistant blinked. "Sir, I said it is real," Adrian repeated, his voice firm. "And tell them there will be no further comments until after the wedding." Mia's breath caught. "Wedding?" He turned back to her, eyes steady. "You once told me that airports are places where people leave and never return. Maybe it is time we change that. Stay, Mia. Not because of a contract. Stay because you want to." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The world outside faded to the hum of evening traffic and the low buzz of fluorescent lights. Finally, she nodded, tears shimmering behind her smile. "Then I am staying," she said. Adrian's shoulders eased, the tension that had followed him for years melting away. "Good," he murmured, "because I am done pretending." He reached for her hand again, the same way he had on that first day at the airport. Only this time, there was no misunderstanding, no lie, no act, just a promise formed quietly between two people who had already walked through every mistake fate could offer. Outside, the city lights began to glow one by one, as if the world itself were applauding the truth. The following weeks moved like a quiet dream. The scandal faded as quickly as it had risen, replaced by glowing headlines about Skylink's success and the unexpected love story behind its CEO. Yet for Adrian and Mia, life had slowed into something softer, something real. Mia returned to her art. The foundation offered her a small studio overlooking the city, its walls bare and waiting. Each morning, she painted with the same calm focus she once thought she had lost. And every evening, Adrian would stop by after his meetings, jacket draped over one arm, watching her from the doorway with the kind of peace that no boardroom could ever give him. One night, as she worked on a canvas inspired by their first meeting, he stepped closer. "You are painting the airport?" She smiled. "It is where everything started." He studied the strokes of silver and blue. "You turned chaos into art." "You turned a mistake into something worth keeping," she replied softly. He looked around the room, then handed her a folder embossed with the Skylink seal. "This belongs to you." She frowned. "What is it?" "Approval for a new scholarship program," he said. "Runway Hearts. It will fund young artists from families who cannot afford art school. It will start with your name." Her eyes widened as she opened the folder. "You did this for me?" "For people like you," he said. "For everyone who deserves a chance to be seen." Emotion rose in her throat. She set the folder down and turned toward him. "You keep giving me things I never asked for." He smiled faintly. "Because you gave me something I never thought I would have again." "What is that?" she asked. "Peace," he said simply. The next evening, they attended the program's launch gala. The Art Foundation Hall glittered with lights, filled with students, donors, and reporters. Yet the air carried none of the old tension, none of the masks. Adrian moved easily among the crowd, greeting guests with genuine warmth. Mia stayed close, not as a symbol or a story, but as his equal. When the speeches began, Adrian stepped to the podium. "A year ago, I believed that love was a distraction," he said. "Then I met someone who proved me wrong. She reminded me that integrity, compassion, and courage are not weaknesses. They are the foundations of everything worth building." He turned toward Mia, eyes softening. "This program is dedicated to her for teaching me that real strength is not power. It is kindness." Applause filled the room. Mia felt her heart swell as he descended the stage and reached for her hand. "You never told me you were going to say that," she whispered. He smiled. Some things are better unscripted. After the event, they stepped outside onto the terrace. The night air was cool, carrying the scent of jasmine from the garden below. The city shimmered beyond them. "You know," Mia said, "for someone who claimed not to believe in love, you turned out to be quite the romantic." He laughed softly. "Do not tell anyone. It would ruin my reputation." She leaned against him, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. "So, what happens now?" He wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "Now we build something that does not depend on appearances or contracts. Something that lasts." She looked up at him, smiling. "Then let us begin." And beneath the city lights that once witnessed their lie, they finally began to live their truth. 1 year later, the airport looked exactly the same as the day they met, busy, loud, and full of strangers chasing destinations. But this time, Mia was not holding a sign. She was holding a sketchbook. Her art exhibit, The Runway of Hearts, had just finished its tour across 3 cities, and the final showcase was being held right here, in the terminal where everything began. Large panels displayed her paintings, silver clouds, glass reflections, and a girl standing in the rain holding a name she had never meant to call. Each piece told a story of mistakes turned into miracles. People stopped to look, smiling, taking pictures. In the center of it all, a plaque read, "Dedicated to the one who believed when I did not." Mia adjusted the flowers on the podium when she heard a familiar voice behind her. "You forgot one painting." She turned. Adrian stood there in a dark suit, a soft smile playing on his lips. "The one that ends the story," he said. She laughed quietly. "And what would that be?" He held out a small canvas wrapped in paper. When she unwrapped it, her breath caught. It was a simple painting, 2 hands reaching for each other under a rainfall, the first moment they had met. "Did you paint this?" she asked. "I tried," he said. "But you are the artist, so you can fix the mistakes." Her eyes met his, warm and bright. "Some mistakes do not need fixing." Adrian took a step closer, his voice low and steady. "Mia, I thought I understood success. I thought love was a distraction, but you showed me it is the only thing that makes all the rest mean something." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Inside, a ring glimmered beneath the airport lights. "This time, no contracts, no cameras, just us. Will you marry me?" For a heartbeat, the world went still. The noise of the airport faded, replaced by the rush of her pulse and the warmth in his eyes. "Yes," she whispered. 1,000 times yes. Applause rose from nearby travelers who had witnessed the moment. Adrian laughed, slipping the ring onto her finger as flashes from passing phones caught the sparkle. Mia threw her arms around him, tears and laughter blending into one. "Do you realize," she said softly, "that this is still the wrong pickup spot?" He smiled against her hair. "Then it is the best mistake we ever made." Outside, planes lifted into the sky one after another, each taking off toward its own new beginning. And among them, beneath the glass and the rain, 2 people stood where their story had started, proving that sometimes love does not arrive on time. It simply arrives when it is meant to.